Are these newfangled things any good?
Cotton Fantasy is an interesting roguelike shoot-'em-up anime game, the newest installment in a long line of Cotton games. This arcade-style game is not the usual kind of game I play or do reviews for, as I don't really tend to go for these kind of games, but I was interested to see what it had for offer. The main things that stand out to me are slight translation oddities, such as the opening text saying, "from Cotton's perspective," and a few other things that just, those words didn't quite fit right. This, combined with the fact that I accidentally skipped the tutorial, meant that once I was finally launched into the game after 2 intros, I was really confused. The opening cutscene is very anime, and again I found that a little jarring as I didn't quite know what to expect. The gameplay is also incredibly fast, so just being launched straight into it was a little overwhelming. The game definitely has some charm. I felt the individual art pieces were really nice, but altogether the style just didn't really blend. I felt a lot of different things for the elements such as monsters, animation and background, some of which I really loved and others I just think didn't go well together. Also, at first I thought the gameplay would be really easy as it's mostly holding down one button, but it did actually ramp up in difficulty quite nicely and I was pretty impressed by that. It's odd to me that the closest game I've played to this is Cuphead, and I really don't want to compare them as they are quite different games, but if you've never really played anything like this, that's the best thing I can say. Where Cuphead is incredibly linked in terms of its art, animation and gameplay style, I really felt that this game just didn't quite have that. Overall, I found the menus a bit ugly and hard to navigate, the gameplay was just overwhelming and just a bit weird. Probably not a game for me. I was also unsure whether this game was a sequel, and sure enough, it's a series that dates back to 1991, which explains a lot more about the game in terms of gameplay, art style, context, etc. Jumping in on the 10th game in the installment was maybe not a good idea. I was very lost content-wise. Our resident retro expert Anton gave the game a go, and here's what they've got to say about it.
The Cotton franchise is a bit of a retro oddity. Having its start on the Sega System 16 arcade platform, it's a franchise that has built up a little bit of prestige going through the subsequent decades following its release. This has seen many sequels and many ports, and through this process, some of that prestige has eroded, with some of the ported titles being flawed in their porting or forward porting flaws of the original titles. Cotton Fantasy here is a modern entry in the pre-existing franchise which looks to remedy many of the flaws of the franchise and carry it forward into its 30th decade. Right from the bat, upon playing this title, it gave me strong Sega Saturn vibes with a mix of Death Smiles on the Xbox 360. It's a 2D space shooter that doesn't verge too close into bullet hell but gets some of that frantic energy back into it, however. Although this does not affect the difficulty as it ramps fairly smoothly. Your main character Cotton relies on crystals to act almost like a variety of power-ups and different weapons to carry you through the stage. I think the dynamic that made the game most interesting was the variety of characters, with some of them being cameos from other space shooters. The anime girls that you play as throughout this game act in very unique ways. Initially I was expecting them to be different sort of shooting patterns, however you've got some novel ones. For instance, a character that rather than having a life bar has a time bar, and rather than updating your weapons, you're increasing your time limit on the stage. The game features 16 levels which you can get through fairly quickly, especially if you're relying on the continues. I think this is a game best enjoyed in the likes of Ikaruga by going through the first time, using as many continues as you want, and then setting it as your own self-challenge to see how low you can get your continue count down to on subsequent runs. Overall, I was impressed by how many cutscenes they fit into this game. They were less visual novel than expecting and actually being surprisingly animated. Overall, I think they've done a responsible job in terms of the visual aesthetic of this game compared to some of their previous ports of Cotton games, some of which had a little bit too much visual effects and clutter. This one's a lot more clean in its aesthetic, even if it borders on mobile graphics in some territory. Overall, even though some of the prestige of the Cotton franchise has eroded with time, I am pleased to say this is probably the most accessible entry into this franchise, and if you're interested in dipping your toes into what was formerly a rare retro oddity, this is the best place to start with Cotton Fantasy, the 10th entry in the franchise.
Well, that's everything from us. Do like and subscribe for more Nintendo Switch reviews.